Imagine pulling up to a farm gate before sunrise in Wayne County, Ohio, in the hard blue cold of late January. The latch is rusted shut. The gravel lane has nearly disappeared under dead grass. And beyond it sit 58 acres that have not earned $1 in 11 years. The high tunnel is torn open at one end. The barn roof sags like it is tired of holding on. There is a 1979 Alice Chalmers tractor backed into the machine shed with a bird nest inside the exhaust pipe. And standing at that gate is Nora Jean Whitaker, 46 years old, no agriculture degree, no family farm waiting for her, no husband in work boots beside her. For 19 years, Nora had run purchasing for 3 public school cafeterias outside Dayton. Milk deliveries, produce bids, frozen invoices. Budget meetings under fluorescent lights. Then one cold morning, she took $162,400 from her retirement savings, signed papers on a farm everyone else called finished, and walked through a gate that had not opened cleanly in years. Her sister cried. Her old co-workers passed around the listing and laughed. Even the extension agent was careful with his words. He told her the soil was badly compacted, the drainage was poor, and the backfield would need serious patience before it produced anything dependable. Nora nodded like she was listening to bad news. But in the passenger seat of her truck was a 3-inch binder full of maps. Feed calculations, soil notes, planting dates, restaurant contacts, and one sentence written on the first page in black marker. A field remembers what you do to it. Over the next 12 months, that sentence would become the reason half the county stopped laughing. To understand why Nora bought that place, you have to understand what she had lost. She grew up in Ashland County, not on a big farm, but beside one. Her grandmother kept 2 garden acres behind an old White House, with rhubarb by the fence line, onions drying in the shed, and a dozen Rhode Island Reds that seemed to know every child by the sound of her footsteps. Nora spent summers there before life moved faster than she did. She learned that tomatoes do not care how rushed you are. She learned that hens get quiet before weather changes. She learned that soil is not dirt if someone is paying attention. Then came college, then rent, then insurance. Then a job that was supposed to be temporary and somehow became 19 years. By her mid-40s, Nora could negotiate the price of canned peaches for a school district down to the penny, but she had not planted a row of anything in years. Then her grandmother died. After the funeral, Nora found a folded envelope tucked inside the old family recipe box. It was not money. It was not a deed. It was a seed packet from 1988, brittle and empty, with her grandmother's handwriting across the back. Don't wait until you feel ready. That line stayed with her longer than the funeral flowers. 3 months later, she saw the listing. 58 acres outside Creston, Ohio, old dairy ground, 1 farmhouse, 1 damaged high tunnel, 2 collapsing chicken houses, a shallow pond, a machine shed full of things nobody had wanted badly enough to move. The former owner, Franklin Hess, had milked cows there for decades until his knees gave out. After that, the farm sat. A renter took 1 hay crop, then quit. Brush came in. Thistles came in. Groundhogs moved under the corn crib. The place became one of those properties people pointed at while driving past and said, "Shame what happened there." Nora did not see shame. She saw water lines already buried. She saw a barn still standing. She saw fencing that could be repaired faster than it could be built. She saw a high tunnel that looked ugly from the road but still had ribs worth saving. Most people saw abandonment. Nora saw a head start covered in weeds. The first week after closing, she did something that made the neighbors certain she was in over her head. She did not renovate the kitchen. She did not repaint the porch. She did not put up a pretty farm sign. She drove to a small livestock auction near Mount Hope and bought 32 laying hens, 6 Tamworth pigs, and 2 bottle calves nobody else bid on because they looked too thin. An older man in a seed company jacket watched her pay and shook his head. "She bought the animals before she fixed the farm," he said loud enough for her to hear. Nora looked at the receipt, folded it, and put it in her coat pocket. What he did not know was that Nora had spent the previous winter treating that farm like a failing supply chain. She had studied rotational grazing until midnight. She had compared feed conversion tables. She had called 3 market gardeners and asked what they wished they had known their first year. She had visited a pasture poultry operation in Knox County, a small hog farm near Mansfield, and a winter greens grower outside Oberlin. She did not have experience, but she had something almost as rare. She had a plan detailed enough to survive bad weather. By the second week of February, the old Alice Chalmers had new tires, a flushed fuel line, and a battery that barely fit the tray. By March, the high tunnel had new plastic pulled tight over the ribs, with 2 friends from her old job standing on ladders in sleet while Nora shouted measurements from below. She planted spinach, arugula, green onions, and flats of lettuce under frost cloth. She dragged portable fencing across the first acre of pasture and moved the pigs every few days, not because it looked pretty, but because the ground needed teeth, weight, manure, and rest. The hens followed later in a homemade egg mobile built from an old hay wagon and leftover plywood. Nora kept numbers on everything. Feed in, eggs out, hours worked, diesel burned, losses, repairs, weather, market prices, customer names. She was not romantic about the farm. She loved it too much to lie to herself about it. And still, by April, the town had formed an opinion. The opinion was simple: this would not last. People slowed down on County Road 71 to stare at the woman moving fence in the rain. A neighbor offered to buy the tractor when she got tired of pretending. A man who had farmed nearby for 40 years stopped at the mailbox and told her the Westfield was sour clay. His exact words were, "You'll grow cattails there before you grow food." Nora thanked him. Then she went back to the field with a shovel. That shovel is where the story changed, because the Westfield looked dead from the road. Flat, heavy, wet in the wrong places, crusted over when the sun hit it. But Nora had pulled soil cores in February. She had marked the low spots. She had tested pH. She had mapped where the old cows used to be fed, where organic matter was higher, and where the compaction was worst. The Westfield was not dead, it was sealed, so she broke it slowly. Pig rotation first, then broad-forked strips near the high side. Then a cover crop blend of oats, field peas, and tillage radish. Then compost from the old manure bay, turned and tested before she dared use it. It was slow work, ugly work, the kind of work nobody takes a picture of because it looks like failure until it suddenly does not. By Mother's Day weekend, Nora loaded 16 crates of greens into the back of her truck and drove to the farmer's market in Worcester. She put up a hand-lettered cardboard sign, "Whitaker Rest Farm, cold-grown greens, pasture eggs." For the first 20 minutes, almost nobody stopped. Then a chef from a small breakfast place bought 2 bags of arugula. Then a mother bought eggs and came back 10 minutes later for more. Then someone asked where the farm was. Then someone else said, "Is that the old Hess place?" Nora sold out before noon. The next week, she brought more. Sold out again. By June, 2 restaurants were buying from her every Friday morning, and a local bakery wanted her eggs because the yolks made their brioche look almost orange. But June also brought the moment that nearly ended the whole thing. On a Tuesday night, a line of storms came across northern Ohio hard enough to shake the farmhouse windows. At 2:14 in the morning, Nora heard a sound like fabric being ripped out of the sky. The high tunnel plastic had torn loose. By the time she got outside in rain boots and a headlamp, the wind had peeled half of it back over the ribs. Lettuce flats were knocked sideways. Water was pooling against the low beds. A row of young basil was flattened into mud. Then the pigs found the weak spot in the electric fence. By sunrise, Nora was soaked, bleeding from one knuckle, and standing in a field with 6 muddy pigs nosing through the one section she had just seeded. That morning, her sister drove up from Dayton and found Nora sitting on an overturned bucket in the barn aisle, too tired to take off her gloves. For the first time, Nora said it out loud. Maybe they were right, not because she was afraid of hard work, because hard work was not enough. The bank did not care how hard she worked. The weather did not care. The soil did not care about her story. Customers would not wait forever because the farmer had a bad night. Her sister looked around the barn, at the ruined plastic, the mud, the loose feed sacks, the clipboard hanging from a nail. Then she asked one question. What would you do if this were a kitchen route? Nora stared at her. A kitchen route. That was the old world. Deliveries, vendors, failure points, backup inventory, cold storage. Margins so thin one missed truck could wreck a week. By noon, Nora had stopped grieving and started rerouting. She called the 2 restaurants before they called her. She discounted the damaged greens and sold them as cooking greens. She moved the pigs into the sacrifice lot by the barn. She borrowed a roll of greenhouse repair tape from a grower she had visited months earlier. She posted a plain note at the market table explaining the storm loss without begging for pity. No drama, no speech. Just the truth in the product she still had. That weekend, people bought every damaged bag. Not because it looked perfect. Because Nora had not hidden the damage. And that was when the farm began to feel different to the town. A niece filmed a short clip of Nora at sunrise, standing beside the repaired high tunnel, holding an egg still warm from the nest while fog lifted off the pasture. Nora did not pose. She was half asleep, hair tucked under a knit cap, jacket streaked with mud. The clip reached a regional farm page by accident. Within days, people who had never heard of Creston were asking where they could buy eggs from the woman rebuilding the old Hess place. By late July, Nora had 160 hens on pasture, 9 pigs rotating through brushy sections, and a small herd share waiting list for the calves once they were ready. But the real proof was still waiting in the west field, the same field the neighbor said would grow cattails before food. In August, after months of rotation, cover crop, compost, and rest, Nora planted a late block of zucchini, winter squash, and sunflowers on the high side. Everyone knew it was too soon. Everyone knew she should have waited another year. Nora planted anyway, not the whole field, not foolishly, just enough to test whether the soil had started answering back. By September, the sunflowers were taller than the fence posts. The zucchini came first, then squash, then a row of pumpkins with thick stems and clean leaves. The neighbor who had made the cattail joke pulled into the lane one afternoon and got out without closing his truck door. He walked to the edge of that field and stood there for a long time. Nora waited. Finally, he pointed at the squash vines and said quietly, "That ground was never dead, was it?" Nora shook her head. "No," she said, "it was just tired." By the end of her first year, Whitaker Rest Farm had become something nobody on that road expected. Not a huge operation, not a miracle, not some glossy dream farm on a magazine cover. A working farm. 212 pastured hens, 11 Tamworth pigs finished on rotation, 2 calves healthy enough to keep, a high tunnel producing greens through winter, a half-acre market garden where weeds had been waist-high the year before. She sold at 2 weekly markets, supplied 3 local kitchens, and filled 54 CSA boxes every other week with eggs, greens, herbs, squash, and pork shares. Her gross revenue came in at $88,700 after feed, repairs, seed, market fees, processing, fuel, and the kind of unexpected costs that humble every first-year farmer. She still ended the year in the black. Not by much, but enough. Enough to prove the farm had not been finished. Enough to prove the old infrastructure had value. Enough to prove the Westfield had been misread. Enough to prove that Nora's old life had not been a detour. It had been training. The same county office that had warned her to be patient invited her to speak the next winter at a small farm viability meeting in Worcester. Nora did not bring a slideshow full of inspirational quotes. She brought the binder, the first soil test, the storm week numbers, the market sheets, the Westfield map with muddy fingerprints on the corner, the handwritten seed packet from her grandmother, sealed in a plastic sleeve. She stood in front of growers who had been farming longer than she had been dreaming, and she told them the truth. "I did not save this place because I believed hard enough," she said. "I saved it because I stopped asking whether the field was hopeless and started asking what it had been trying to tell me." That line traveled farther than she expected. But the people who knew Nora best understood something else. She had not walked through that rusted gate because she thought the farm would be easy. She had walked through it because for once in her life, difficult felt honest. The field did remember. It remembered 11 years of neglect. It remembered the weight of pigs crossing compacted ground. It remembered cover crop roots opening air where there had been none. It remembered compost, frost cloth, rain, mistakes, repairs, and a woman in a headlamp refusing to pretend damage was the same thing as failure. A field remembers what you do to it. For 11 years, that farm had remembered being abandoned. In 1 year, Nora gave it something else to remember.